So, hello and welcome, guys. Cyber Diaries podcast, episode number 3. We have another amazing guest with us, Nikki Webb from Custodian 360. So, welcome on board, Nikki.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's great to have you on board. I guess just firstly, I wanted to, it's always interesting to hear how people stumble across cybersecurity. So if you can just, I guess, briefly overview and tell our audience, those of you who don't know you, a bit about your, career journey, how you ended up in cybersecurity, what attracted you to the field.
Yeah, sorry, it lagged a little bit there. So mine's not really an amazing story of how I ended up in cybersecurity. I was basically coming back from a very long career break from having my children. I'm a mum of three. And Andy James, who's the CEO here at Custodian 360, was just starting Custodian 360. And I was, sort of, I think I'm in an R and cybersecurity had started to excite me because I was hearing about it from him. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give this a go. And I literally fell head over heels, fell into it, and kind of found my people, found my tribe, and that is literally it. I've got no certs. I'm not technical. Obviously, I'm sales primarily, but yeah, that was it. There wasn't any huge realization that this was where I wanted to be. It just so happens that there was elements of cybersecurity that did creep into sort of my previous career, pre having the children, that had interested me, stuff around sort of whistleblowing, espionage, that kind of thing. So I kind of had a sort of an interest in it. And this was just the ideal opportunity. And I said I'd do it for a year and see how it goes. And we're now 7 years in and I'm still here and still loving it. So
Yeah, time flies. Time flies, I guess, when you're having fun. I just wanted to pick up on a few things you just mentioned. I guess, there's always raging debate between, people about how to break into cybersecurity, whether you should have so many certs, be so technical. And you just mentioned you are not technical. Do you think that ever held you back? Or because obviously I want to sometimes, it's so good to hear from someone who went through that path, who experienced and never, been stopped by non being technical and actually working in the field. There's people obviously doing, whether they're doing CAPSLOCK, whether they're doing another sort of journeys into cybersecurity, just to showcase what can, be achieved.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, through the mentoring at CAPSLOCK, I consider myself really privileged to see people that are completely reskilling and coming into the industry in a very different way to what I did. I think we have the argument, we hear it all the time about certs. I've never seen that as a blocker for me. I work within an organization where we have the skill sets within here that if I'm going into something, that I don't understand or I need some help, I can take those people along with me. I think that breaking into cybersecurity, I think, we talk about the skill gap and we talk about, that none of us at our age are going to be able to retire because there's nobody coming in. I don't think that's strictly true. I think there's some incredible talent coming into the industry. And I think we forget about, the fundamental skills that we have as human beings, sort of, like one of my, in my skill set, I suppose, like problem solving. I love taking a problem, picking it apart and solving it. In cybersecurity, I mean, that's a really good, sort of tool to have in your toolbox. Sort of the critical thinking, the thinking about the what ifs, that comes down to risk. We think about, what's the risk if I do this, what will happen, that kind of thing. But I do think that we have to get away from this, if you go and do these certs, that's it, you're in the industry and you don't have to worry about it anymore. I think we have to accept that anybody's journey in cybersecurity is about continuous learning. And I'm always learning. I'm like a sponge and it's something that I enjoy doing. But I don't think we put enough emphasis. I think we put too much emphasis on certs and we don't put enough emphasis on the soft skill sets that we all have as human beings. And it's about, the younger generations that are coming into the industry. It's about finding what those skill sets are for them and helping them home then into, what area to come into within the industry. Yeah, I mean, certs, they have their place, don't get me wrong. We have to have them, but I don't think they're the be all and end all, and they've certainly never held me back. not having
Yeah, and
them.
I think sometimes even on the flip side, I don't think that, as you say, certs are end of sort of end all the journey into cyber. I think the one thing even now, like I think I'm sort of sometimes changing my mindset as well when I mentor some of the junior people that could, because the one idea that I always have in my head is no matter how great you are, if you can't convince someone else that your idea is great, your idea might never reach a day of light. And that's where the soft skills comes into play. And for example, as you mentioned, like CAPSLOCK and all of those areas, for example, I think, for example, in cybersecurity, people who are on the journey in, people like coming from teaching professions are doing so well because they have those skills and they can explain, might be, complex sort of terms and ideas, and break it down to someone who doesn't have a clue about technology and things like that. So those skills are really important, and I think the more we can emphasize and the more we can teach people the soft skills, we're talking now as well. I think cybersecurity is, its influence and its reach within the businesses are growing, because we are talking, we used to do cybersecurity just for the IT. Now we got data and technology across every single department. So, we have to help HR, secure business development, all of those areas. Now, if we just kind of circle back a bit about, so you are global channel manager for Custodian 360. So again, in that world, people who never heard of, what would be your main responsibilities and how do you think your role contributes to the, company's mission?
Yeah, so that's quite an easy one. So Custodian 360, we're a MSSP. So I head up the global channel. So my main responsibility is to make sure that our channel partners have everything that they need. And I think as salespeople, we do get sort of, a lot of backlash from the industry. And I think part of my role here is to make sure that the sales strategies within our partners, they're not, they're not hounding people. They're not, it's actually educating them that the way to sell our solutions themselves to their customers is to basically guide their customers on a journey and to make sure that that journey is what's right for that individual customer. So that's primarily, my role. Obviously, market presence is, that's always key. That's one of my sort of KPIs, if you like. And making sure that our ethics align, or our partners' ethics align with, what our mission is here. And that is just simply affording customers to be able to afford reliable and secure and robust security solutions, not just selling things for the sake of selling things, which I think we see a lot of in the industry. And it grinds my gears, as I'm sure it does everybody else's. I think we've got to get away from us being a massive sales engine. We've got to get to the point where we're educators and we're providing a service, as opposed to just selling shiny bits of kit and great software that's coming out and not actually implementing it properly. So that's kind of, my role here within the company.
Do you feel that kind of you touched on it here? We all know and seen, bad marketing tactics, these pushy salespeople. Do you see that in some ways, some of these things that obviously are constantly appearing in the industry, creating a bad rep, and obviously people that swim are sort of against the tide, it makes your job harder?
Yeah, I do. I see it daily. It would be very easy to sort of chuck mud. I'm not going to do that. I think, if I think I've got to the stage now where if an end user is going to push back on price and price alone, and they don't have an understanding of what they're buying, it's kind of like a suck it and see, because we're not going to delve down into price wars, because you want a cheaper solution. The solutions that we provide here have been tested and tested and tested here in our SOC and our labs. If they're fit for purpose, we will take them to our partners. If they're not, we won't. And we won't be dictated to by the end user of what they want to use on price. So I think that's a bit of a downside to it. I think the marketing side of it, I could talk for hours about. I find it hugely frustrating. The FUD, which we will talk about. We're seeing at the moment for Transport for London. I have some really, really strong issues with the ambulance chasing, and that's what it is. It's ambulance chasing. The marketing teams all come out. We saw it with CrowdStrike the other week. It's not a good look. It's not cool. There's instant response teams at the moment at TfL up to their neck in it. The last thing they need is to be coming on social media and seeing, yeah, the marketing sort of FUD around it and, people finger pointing. So no, I do struggle. I do have some kickback from it. I just rise above it and move on. It's not something I'm ever going to compete with. I'm not going to compete with price wars, and I'm certainly not ever calling out other vendors or other organizations doing the same as I am when they get hit, because that could be me tomorrow. It's them today, me tomorrow. I'd like people around me to have the empathy for me that I have for other security teams, and we're all in it together. I think that's something that, the community side of what I do, I think that this is what drives that. I think, we're an industry. We're not women, we're not men in an industry. We're people, we're a group of people in the industry, and we're a community. And I just think, the whole idea and the premise of community is when the chips are down, do you know what I mean? You all pull together and you check in on each other. And yeah, some of the stuff that I see around, especially incident, I just don't like it. It doesn't sit well with me. I'm not going to change it on my own, but I will call it out and I will say, yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah, I think there's so much going on. It's not only sometimes fun. It's also like, as you say, CrowdStrike. What happened is obviously um competitors trying to ride on someone's downfall and saying, "Oh, it would never happen to our solution. Therefore, everybody jump ship to us." Um, I think another thing is, I would like to actually, because you are in sales, and I've been talking to people in sales for a number of years now about this issue. And I think sometimes some, especially I guess larger vendors, they are overlooking the problem. Now, to me, I always say, same as security, I guess similar in sales. Based on the metrics that you measure or KPIs that you measure, you create a certain type of culture. So if you're measuring and chasing quick buck, you create a culture where you are forcing people to make calls, make cold calling, whatever. But the problem is, yes, you can sell a solution, but what happens normally, that solution is lasts, well, whatever, maximum 12 months, say, and then it's ripped out and replaced. So cheaper paying twice, and the vendors are also struggling to, because no one is measuring, longevity of those solutions, quality of the, commitments that people are making. So, what's your thought? Do you think that there is too much going on in the way some organizations are measuring their sales cycles or sales KPIs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you only got to go on LinkedIn, obviously my feed will be different to yours, say, because obviously I am sales, but I think you've only got to look on LinkedIn at, redundancies, people being let go within sales roles. And that's not just new people in the industry. That's, people that have been selling in the industry longer than I have. And I do think you're right. I think there's ridiculous targets put on their heads. And I mean, you see it all the time. You see people calling it out all the time. I think that we don't have much compassion for the fact that, yes, they might have rung me 10 times this week, but they are doing their job. They have a number on their head. They have a number of calls they've got to make a week. They've got a number that they've got to hit sort of financially. So there's an awful lot of pressure. I think, the way that we do things here, I can only speak of the way that we do stuff because obviously I've never worked anywhere else in it. But I think, you've got to just sort of define long-term goals. And I think it's everything that we see in this fast buck culture within the sales teams is very much about making that fast buck. It's, I've worked on projects that, might have been in the pipeline for 2 years before they come to anything, to an orders place.
Yeah.
And that's very much what we work on here. It's a long-term goal. It's about building a relationship with those customers and, that carrying on and on sort of thing. But I think when you're making a fast buck out of it, I think, I've seen some sales cycles that are 4 weeks, and I'm like, there's not a chance that your customer fully understands. There's no way that you've implemented that properly, and that the pre-sales and the technical side of stuff, pre-sales, and none of that. I just don't see how any of that's done properly in that time. And I think the other thing that's really important about that as well, and I was talking to someone about this the other day. They went to work for a large vendor that we all know, and they literally hit the ground running. They had no training, whether that be on the product or on the company itself. They had no proper onboarding process, and they were let go after their probation period because they were still in the midst of trying to learn. I think you wouldn't expect somebody technical to go in and do, say, pre-sales for as a vendor. You wouldn't expect them to go in and like be on the phone the first day supporting people with technical stuff. So why do you expect the same of salespeople? If I go to an event, if I go to, we'll use infosec as an example because it's a big one, and I'm going to look at a technology that we're thinking about bringing in here, I want that person on the stand to be able to show me that technology, show me how it works, explain how it works, tell me what problems it solves, and you know what like their roadmap is. If you're just putting salespeople on your like booths at infosec or on the phone in your office, I don't understand how they're supposed to know any of that without the proper training. So I think that's important. I mean, it is a culture thing, and you're never going to change it. I mean, if anybody is listening to this today, I think one of the things I would say is if you're, you know, if you're a salesperson and you've been through a rough ride the last couple of years with being let go, finding somewhere, and that's the other thing as well. It impacts that person's mental health because they look like a job hopper, which then makes it even harder for them to get through that interview stage. So that whole bit I don't like. But I would say if you're going for interviews at larger organizations within cybersecurity and sales, have a look at Glassdoor, have a look at what's being said, and make your own mind up if that's the kind of culture you want to be in, because you've only got to look at the company that I was just talking about and you can see what kind of culture it is, and it's not good for anybody. And the other thing is as well, it's like I see it as well in a lot of organizations, like they don't measure success in what I think is a terribly healthy way. It's quite demeaning towards the sales team. Yeah, and it's the recognise and reward culture as well. I don't like that either. I think, you know, you see the same people for the same organisations every year going off to Vegas or wherever they do their sales things and stuff. And it's like, yeah, okay, but they head up teams. There might be 20 people working underneath them that have achieved that figure for them to go. Where's the reward for those guys?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, for example, there's one thing, as I say, I'm very preaching a lot lately is about what you measure. That's the culture you're going to create in your business. So, for example, as you say, sales, I've been actually teaching some people as well. So I don't remember who I was speaking to one organization and they wanted their salespeople to collaborate between themselves. And I said, look, if you're rewarding only one person who achieves the most amount of sales, what's my incentive to collaborate with someone else if only one person wins? So you created incentive structure that prevents collaboration, and then you want to put a poster on a wall to collaborate. That's never going to happen. It's
No.
impossible. So you have to think, as you say, how are you going to measure what incentives you create? And I think it's very important, even like what you just mentioned. I got one really important example, I think, as well from InfoSec, that vendors put in their, their whatever, their posts, their whatever, what they are representing, their booths. But you have to have a clear vision of what you want to achieve in InfoSec. Now, I went to one specific vendor because I wanted to learn more about their solution. Next to the table where you sit at and talk to the salesperson, there was a game that, I don't know what's it called, but it's like a table where you push like a puck and you try to score a goal. It makes a lot of sound. So, and it's right behind me. So I was talking with someone, but I couldn't hear anything. So I was like, how do you think you're going to achieve sales if you got this game next to the tables where salespeople are trying to talk about your solution? You have to decide what you want to achieve. Are you want to attract people just because of the game, or you want to showcase your solution? You have to pick one. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes, people miss that,
I,
how they do things.
yeah, that's a whole nother conversation about gamification.
Yeah.
I could talk about that for hours as well. I think we have to be careful. Um, you know, as an industry, we want to be taken seriously, but you probably have conversations every day, as do I, where you've got big organisations that don't take cybersecurity seriously, and then we invite them along to these conferences, InfoSec, we use that as an example. And there's all these games everywhere, and it's kind of I just there's lots of stuff I could say about it, but that's for another day. But I think you're right. I think there's not. I think when you look at satisfaction, when I look at a metric and I look at, you know, doing a job well, I think it's about retention. For me, it's always about retention. And that to me means that you know, we've done a good job. We've kept that customer happy, that customer's happy with our service, they're happy with the product, they're happy with the delivery of the product, and they're happy with us as an organization. And I don't think that's the rule of thumb in the industry. I don't think people look at retention enough. You know, we don't actively outwardly market, because again, because of retention, it's word of mouth. You know, obviously I go out networking and stuff. We've met, that's how we
Yeah.
met. But yeah, a lot of it is incoming, and it comes in because the customers that we already look after trust us and respect us and encourage other people to work with us. So we're doing something right. I'm not saying we've got it perfect, because nobody's perfect. And we, you know, if we all thought we were perfect, we'd never learn anymore. But retention is something that nobody looks at. And that's not just with their customers, that's with their staff as well. And I do think, yeah, that should be a lot more important than a game of air hockey on their
Yeah.
stand.
I don't think it's only that. I think the one important point sometimes as well, which I really miss, and would be interesting to hear your thoughts, is I often talk with vendors about honesty. Now, what I mean by that is when I'm on a sales call and I'm talking the problems that I'm facing, if the vendor says, yeah, we address every single, you know, problem out of your 10 you know, problems. Now, to me, in my head, that rings alarm bells and I hear BS. Because to me, the great solutions are the ones that say, look, we are great at these 8, but we are not so great at these 2. And that's why I want to work with people who are honest, who can say that how they solve problems. Because to me, in my head, your goal is to undersell and over deliver instead of vice versa. And there's too much more now happening, overselling and under delivering. And the thing is, you straight away start a relationship on the wrong foot, because if you promised all of this thing and these things don't happen as soon as you start a relationship, what do you think is going to happen to the retention?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think we very much work on we under promise and over deliver, and that's kind of how we like to be. And I think, I mean, ours is proof is in the pudding. I think if people are concerned, if people say that there's certain problems that we can't help them with, it's always a proof of concept. So I don't think you can't argue with that. You can't dispute that. You can't say, well, yes, it can do that, when they're sat there with it live, playing with it, and they're like, well, no, it can't. I don't see where the trust is there. And I think, you know, we're talking about security. We're talking about whether it's cybersecurity or physical security. There has to be a relationship there, and a relationship is always built on trust.
Yep.
So if you've got a sales, I mean, I don't know about you, but as an end user, if a sales guy's lied to me on the initial call, that's before we've got even looked at the technical stuff, then yeah, that's a massive no for me. And it's a huge red flag, like you just said, huge red flag.
Yeah, it's just sometimes even I think simple, you know, manners or simple, you know, how people behave. Because you know, we all get sales. You know, I know sales is gonna happen, but the thing is, especially for example, if I say to someone no, or I'm not currently looking for that solution, and you still hounding me, now your company straight away becomes, you know, red marked in my head. Okay, these are the type of people I never want to work with. Because, you know, I understand everyone needs to sell, but at the end of the day, I'm usually, you know, I'm not going to tell someone to F off and send them away. But look, I say, look, I'm currently not in a position to consider that type of solution. If I ever do, I'll reach out. And then what do you do with this information? It depends whether you are, you know, a proper salesperson or you're just going to do, you know, nonsense.
Yeah, I
So,
mean,
yeah.
I'm just going to say, I think we have to look at business relationships the same as we do as relationships in our day-to-day life. And, you know, regardless of what the profession is, at all, I don't think, you know, maintaining respect and courtesy is absolutely critical for building a trust in any kind of long-term relationship with a client.
Yeah.
Same as it is in life, you know, with people. So I don't think there's any excuse for being either disrespectful or rude. And I think there's absolutely no excuse for getting to the point where somebody does want to tell them to F off on the phone because they've hounded them that much. I I don't see the need for it ever to be like that. And I don't know if that's a culture thing. I don't know what that is, but it seems to happen a lot, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
all
it does.
salespeople are like
It
that.
does.
Just saying, not all salespeople are like that. I promise.
No, no, but that's the thing. Sometimes, obviously, I guess everyone, you can be caught on a bad day and you can tell them to f off. But I never want to be that person. But sometimes it reaches a boiling point where you as a salesperson, you asked for it. You never want to be that person to tell him. But if somebody can't hear no, as I say, you kind of asked for it. Now, if we circle back and I spot something that you are wearing, so I wanted to talk about how does what is, first of all, what is Cyber House Party, and if you can enlighten our audience, how was it born, how they came about.
Yeah, sure. This is Cyber House Party Hoodie's first outing actually today for this
Yeah.
special occasion. Oh, and the fact that it's now winter, obviously. So Cyber House Party was formed right at the start of lockdown. Basically, we should have all been heading to InfoSec in the June, which is when quite a big group of us always used to meet up and drink and party and do all those great things after the event.
Yeah.
And everybody was feeling a bit down in the dumps by sort of May time. And Mark Avery and Sean Atkinson decided that they would put on an online event where we all met up, a few DJs, had a bit of a laugh, do you know what I mean, all caught up properly. And it was a roaring success. So at the time that it happened, I wasn't in the best place. I I can safely say after those few months, I definitely was never meant to be a teacher. So homeschooling was really, really draining.
Mm.
My two younger ones, and obviously for a salesperson, for someone that was used to being out all the time, not in one place,
Yeah.
I was just finding it really tough. And that evening just changed my whole. It made me realise I wasn't the only one, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
As cliche as that sounds. And so the very following day, with a bit of a sore head, I messaged Mark Avery and said, "Look, I'd love to help you carry on doing this and move forward." So that's how I got involved. I think through lockdown, I mean, it raised a phenomenal amount of money, and it was just people joining online. So we did things like we did some panels, but not really heavy panels, just quite fun panels. We did quizzes and things like that. But then we also had talks on things like mental health, because obviously that was everybody's mental health suffered during that time. We had some really interesting neurodiversity calls as panels on there as well, and lots of other things. And we had some great things happen, like the DJ Danny Howard, he came along and did a set for us, and yeah, it was just really good fun. And we raised loads of money for different charities. And then fast forward to DTX, which was the first real big conference after we were all allowed out again.
Yeah.
They contacted us and said, "Would you like to do one in person?" And I think that was a little bit daunting, because obviously that wasn't our lounge in our pajamas anymore. And it was like, we're not event organisers, but
Yeah.
yeah, go on, we'll do it. And it was just fantastic, because obviously we'd all been shut away for so long. None of us had seen each other in person. And so we did the first live Cyber House Party in the basement at the Fox at
Yeah.
DTX, and it was incredible. And then obviously other events obviously heard about it, saw the pictures, things like that, and started contacting us about doing their conferences, doing their after parties, their networking drinks, things like that. So that's kind of where it started. I think as we went live though and in person and started doing in-person events, we wanted to be more than just somewhere where everybody came, had loads to drink and danced. As much as dance is an amazing thing to do, so we also do panels now as well. So each event that we do, we try and bring something different. So just for example, InfoSec last year, we did a panel around the men in the industry, because there was a few sort of senior male figures within InfoSec that had come out a couple of months before with struggling with their own mental health for different reasons. And one of them said to us that they felt that they had nowhere to go, no one to talk to. It was kind of work related that had got them to that point, and they felt that they didn't have like a peer group of men that they could go to. And so then we started having conversations around why do men feel like that? And there's as much as whether we like it or not, men and women are very different animals, and you know, the things that I need from, you know, a group that I go to are very different to what you would need from a group that you go to. So we had that conversation at infosec last year, and then we've got a panel coming up in a couple of weeks actually at ICE, and that's around sort of mental health within the industry. How do we help? We were talking about Transport for London earlier and their security
Yeah.
teams. How do we help them? So it's kind of a mixture of all those things, but ultimately the grassroots of it are, it's about bringing our community together in a fun way after we've spent the day, you know, tramping the floors in infosec, learning new things, rather than going to an event that, you know, you're sold at, you know, because you go to like the different vendor events, don't you, and it's
Yeah.
quite salesy. This is completely not sales. There's no selling allowed. Our sponsors understand that, and they're brilliant. We couldn't have done half of what we've done without the incredible sponsors that we've had over the years. And yeah, and while people are still coming and still enjoying it, then yeah, we're carrying on doing it. I think we've got sort of 30 DJs now from the industry, which is really odd as well, because as an industry, we seem to have loads of DJs.
Yeah, seems like
Um,
it.
and I think the goal is next year, DEF CON. We'd like, yeah, to take Cyber House Party to Vegas, but it's cool. It's really good. And it's, you know, it's something for me, it's community, and it's something away from my day job, and it's something else, you know, to sort of focus on. And yeah, I've made some incredible friends through it.
No, yeah, it's definitely. I think, you know, especially, I think I was in the first one in Fox, and I was obviously the last one in InfoSec as well. And it feels like obviously you can see the difference in the growth and what it's doing and how it's expanding. When is the next one that people could potentially join?
Everybody's welcome. So that will be on the 24th at the International Cyber Expo at Olympia. We're hosting the networking drinks after that for them. So that should be a good night. And then the next one after that is back to DTX, where it all began, which will
Oh,
always be
yeah.
our favourite.
Sounds good. And then obviously you mentioned a bit, and obviously it's been a roaring success in terms of helping charities. Can you just mention what charities that you guys are working with?
So we now focus on the NSPCC, and I think that's because there's a couple of reasons for that. So when we first started, we looked at charities that needed help at that time. So when it first started, it was things like Mind, children's mental health charities, and then we did like we did one for Ukraine, and then we did one for the Trussell Food Bank. The reason that we only support the NSPCC now is firstly it aligns with White Hat Ball, and NSPCC sort of tends to be the favoured charity of cybersecurity companies that are supporting them. But primarily, it is kind of down to admin, because we are all volunteers. We all do have day jobs, and the NSPCC make it really easy for us to have donations that go straight to them, sort of cut out, yeah, the middleman. So that's why. And the other thing is as well, it's, you know, the NSPCC are doing, and Childline particularly, are doing some great work around cyberbullying. You know, all of the added pressures that children now have that I never had and you never had around um, the digital world online and online harm. So it's kind of giving our bit back. And yeah, when you look into the NSPCC and the work that they do and the stories that you hear and the outcomes that they have, it's kind of like, why wouldn't we support them?
Yeah, I think it's very important, as you say, you know, children are, and obviously they're growing up in different world, in digital world, the way we grew up. And, you know, I even remember actually somebody just posted a video somewhere I just saw recently. Because obviously, no, parents now, the way to, I guess, limit kids' access to digital world is putting time limits. But obviously, some kids are nowadays, they are very clever and they found the ways around it. And this was actually a dad talking in the video saying, I don't know how, but I said I only allow my kids on a social media. There's a limit of half an hour, but they all seem to be spending more time. So basically, what kids were doing, once you change the time settings in the phone, it goes into the next day, so you can have another half an hour. And they were just obviously changing time settings and getting actually more time on the social media. So it's just something I guess you need to, you know, to need to learn and adapt, because obviously in being cybersecurity and actually taking care and protecting your kids is a whole other world. Um, since obviously we touched a bit about caps lock, and you know, there obviously are people who are fortunate enough and they're going through the journey and they have so much support. But there's obviously are people who either can't or decided to go on the journey by themselves. So you've been mentoring there. What you would say that you have learned that would be specific skills or qualities that you believe that allows them to be more successful going into cybersecurity?
Do you mean more successful than people that haven't gone down the CAPSLOCK route, or
No,
just?
no, I mean just people who are, say, for example, so people who are going the caps lock route, they obviously have support there who can provide, interviews, how to do this and that. But there are loads of people who are on their own path into cybersecurity. And do you think that specific skills that they could develop in their own journey can help better than vice versa, for example, than any other specific skills or qualities that potentially help people in the journey into cybersecurity?
Yeah, I think that goes back to what we were saying about earlier. I think, sort of, if you've come this far, if they've come as far to get onto CAPSLOCK, they want to solve problems. And I think that, if we look at everything that we do in the industry, it's all about solving problems, whatever those problems might be. But I think it's having the curiosity and the willingness to continuously learn, because it never stops. No sooner have you learned one thing, does something else come along. So I think that, we shouldn't, there's that dressing, isn't there? You can't, I'm not going to say it 'cause it's rude, but anyway, let's move on from that. But you know what I mean? You can't,
Yeah,
you can't polish up this industry
yeah,
and not be honest about it. So I think it's really important to make really clear to people that are coming into the industry that this isn't something that you're just going to do an exam for. You pass that exam, you come in the industry, and that's it, because it's not. You've
yeah,
literally just signed yourself up to a life of continuous learning. So I think that's crucial. And I think if you're not, I think it's really important to say this as well. If you're not someone that wants to continuously learn, which it's not everyone's cup of tea, cybersecurity is a massive, great big engine. There is so many different job roles. I've got a map somewhere that I share with the mentees, and it's like that might not be on your niche, but there will be something within our industry that you will be right. Right, that's for me. So look for that thing. It's not just because you've done CAPSLOCK or just because you've decided you wanted to come into cybersecurity. It doesn't mean that when you enter into the industry, you have to stay in that one space. You can move. You can, you can pivot and you can move in all different directions. So I think that's important. But I think key for me is you've got to be good at communication and a team player. Communication comes back to what we were saying earlier. You can go into an organization and have to explain what's happened. We use incident response because that's quite an easy one. They've had an incident, you're working through it. You have to be able to explain that storyline that you come up with. You have to be able to explain that to lots of different people. You've got the CEO who probably isn't technical at all, doesn't understand any of the technical jargon. So you've got to really, you've got to be a chameleon. To work in this industry, you have to be a chameleon. And to do that properly, it still comes down to communication. You have to be able to communicate with people and different people and change your tone, change your language to make sure that it makes sense to everybody. And I think, we talk about it a lot. I think that being a team player, and again, as human beings, we're not all team players. Some of us are very solitary animals and we like to be on our own and like to be insular and work on our own. I don't think that works in cybersecurity. You have to be a team player.
yeah,
We're all on the same side, and the only way we're going to beat the bad guys is by working together. So being a team player.
yeah.
Um,
And I think it's important to add, I always talk to, many mentees as well, that I think sometimes people are missing the point, focusing too much on doing, technical labs and all of that. I'm very big proponent and I read a lot. And, getting into the books, like, I've recently read um influenced by a guy who's FBI negotiator and things like that, where he just opens up a new ways how to negotiate, how to translate specific topics, because as you say, the communication, it becomes so important in able to relate that knowledge to someone else. And then another thing which I think sometimes people miss, where we discussed a bit about sales earlier, but the same goes for people looking to break in. Interview process is a two-way street. you have to make sure that A, you're not desperate to end in any job where culture is rotten. So you have to ask and dig quite deep, because there's a 50-50 sort of way street, and you need to find a company that supports the culture that you are happy with. And I think that is very important. Your job, as we discussed with sales as well, your job is to dig and uncover potential red flags, and you have to make up in your head whether you are good with it or not, and
Yeah.
whether you can live it with them or not. And I always say to people as well, there is a graph somewhere I always share. There is a sort of three circles. That's the most important. You got attitude, aptitude, and skills. You need attitude and aptitude and skills for senior roles. You remove the skills for junior roles, but you need to have attitude and aptitude. And as long as you have those in spades, you can land a role. And if you don't, then obviously that business is trying to, I've been, very vocal about companies who are dressing junior roles and asking for 2 years of experience just because they want them to pay junior but getting a senior person in, which is, I think, is wrong.
I think it's wrong. Funny enough, we've had a new person start here this week, who is entry level, totally entry level, and that's what we want when we look for entry level here. We want somebody who's completely fresh, and we want them to come in and learn here in our SOC in a safe environment, learn. And we totally understand that he will probably stay here a year and he will move on, and that's cool with us. I think, having been on the journey with CAPSLOCK, with the groups that I've mentored, it's soul destroying. It's like job after job. And as you say, it says it's entry level and they want 2 years experience. Well, that's not entry level, is it?
Yeah.
And I think what you just said is really important as well. And it's something that I really hammer home when mentoring is, that interview process, as you say, is a two-way street. You've got as much, yes, okay, they're giving you the job and that's great, that's amazing. They're going to be paying your salary. However, they still have an obligation to you as their employee to look after you.
Yeah.
So, all the questions around, like we spoke about earlier, the culture, what's the culture like? I mean, Glassdoor's great for that. But, I encourage them to look for other people that work there or have worked there in similar roles to what they're going for. Contact them on LinkedIn and ask them. They're not going to, then, especially if they don't work there anymore, they're definitely going to tell you the truth. I also think the other thing that is really important, I think we forget about it because we talk about technology or being technical, and we suddenly take all emotion out of that because we suddenly become robots. But it's about, does the organization that you're going for an interview with, do they align, with your own personal values? Does what they stand for as a company, does that align with you? What's the work life balance like? Do they expect you to be in the office 4 days a week and the office is 3 hours away? That's not a great work life balance. Just because it's a job doesn't mean that you should be, missing out on time with your kids, putting your kids to bed, taking your kids to school, reading with your kids, all that thing, or just going out and having a social life, playing footy in the evening, whatever. That's not cool. And I think if you ask in your interview about things like that, and it's a massive red flag for me, and the person that's interviewing you is really evasive about that, that kind of tells you all you need to know.
Yep. Yeah, and I think is another important aspect in that line of questioning is, obviously, if you are starting out and you have a new or junior role, you always need to figure it out. A, have they got a specified training plan of how you're gonna achieve success and how your progression is gonna be measured? If they stumble on that, answers, again, it's a big red flag, because obviously you want to be in a position where you're getting entry level, but as we kind of, normally in career we talk, you either earn or learn. In the beginning of your career, you want to learn as much as possible before you then start earning.
I think though that you need to, that's another great point. When you're on that interview process and that interview journey, you're completely within your rights as the interviewee to ask about your career growth within that company, because that learn or earn thing that's real. Do you know what I mean? If you're entry level coming in, you're learning for the first 2 years. You're not earning. You are earning, but you know what I mean. But if that's the case, if you're going to spend those 2 years learning, who's overseeing that? What does that training look like? Have you got a mentor to help you through that? What's my promotion pathway? What does that look like after that? All of those great things. you've got every right to ask those questions. And I think, you know, as society, especially the traditional British people, we like to be polite and we don't like to speak out of turn. Speak out of turn. It's a two-way street, as you said. Yes, they're interviewing you, but you have, and the other great thing as well is when you sort of kick back like that when you're being interviewed, that's how I feel when I do it. I love those questions coming back at me because it means that they're interested, they're engaged, they're listening,
Yeah.
they're looking at the company. You know, I want them to ask me those questions. So it's not something that we should shy away from asking questions. It's not arrogant, it's not rude. It's setting boundaries, which in all relationships should be done. So yeah,
Well, yeah, I think I think sometimes people even, I'm very big proponent. I think sometimes cybersecurity leaders overlook one certain thing is you don't want to hire a bunch of yes men, because that means you always you're not moving anywhere, and sometimes bring in different ideas and people who are not afraid to speak their mind and challenge you. It's the only way forward. And and I think another point is, we spoke about the same thing with Keith Price in the podcast, is if you bring the same type of person, you're always going to have the same type of outcome. So you have to bring diversity in order to get diverse outcomes. So you always have to think about these things. But I guess we kind of running out of time, and I'm sure we could talk for hours because there's so many different subjects. But you kind of mentioned, obviously, the next big idea, Cyber House Party, potentially going DEFCON and going global. What's in store next for Custodian 360? What's in store for any other interesting things that are happening with Cyber House Party? Looking into the future.
well, the way I feel at the moment, hibernation's looking quite good for me because it's quite cold. No. I think Custodian 360, what's in store for us next? So we've just launched lots of new exciting things around incident response, which is really exciting, and our partners are really excited about it. I think growth-wise here is going to be quite big this year. It's kind of, we've grown up a lot. It's been 7 years hard work, and it's go big or go home time for us here. So that's for here. I think Cyber House Party, I think it would just organically grow. It's a great bunch of people doing something really great for the community. I think the only thing that will hamper that is if, volunteers stop volunteering, because it is a lot of work to put them on. And the only ask we have really is that people keep coming. And then I suppose for me personally, this next year, I'm getting back involved with the cyber helpline. I've had a couple of years off from that. I had a lot going on and couldn't give the time I needed to do it. So I'm just coming back on board with the cyber helpline to help them sort of from an ambassador wise. So going out and speaking at events on, online harm to people that we forget exist, that don't know anything about online harm and don't understand how it works. I think that's it. As much as I can do in the community, I will do. I will continue to do, and just carry on.
I think that's the beauty, the community. I've been in and around the community for a number of years now, and I think, this. I've never been in an industry like cybersecurity where it feels like community is so supportive. I guess just to end another note that important, as you say, to making sure that Cyber House Party is alive. Should someone from the audience would like to get involved and help, how would they go about that?
Just drop me a message on LinkedIn and I can put you in onto the volunteer group, and there's loads of different roles on there and stuff that you can take. The only thing that we really ask for is that if you come along and volunteer, we ask for 4 hours a month. It's not huge, and we ask you to come to as many of the events as you can. Just to do, like even the day-to-day stuff, like, not the marketing as such, but the content, putting the content together, putting that together, the website being updated, all those kind of things. And clearly I can't do any of that because I'd break it all. So anything like that. But next year, if there is anybody listening that has anything to do with the party list for DEF CON, then I would love to make Mark Avery's dream come true and get Cyber House Party to DEF CON. Because he's worked really hard and he's put together something great and it should be celebrated.
Well, hopefully we're gonna get there. So, just to round it off, thank you very much for coming along, Nikki. Another, episode number 3, another 23. Actually, we're chugging along and growing as well, and hopefully, people learn something. It's always amazing, to hear different aspects or different, journeys and different knowledges from, from people in the industry, because it's not only about, CISOs, it's not all about, we had various vendors. It's always interesting to hear different perspectives, especially, those of us who are on the other side of the sales, to understand how, not all salespeople are bad, and not all companies work in the same way. So thank you very much for coming along, Nikki.
No, you're more than welcome. Thanks for having me. It's been lovely.
Brilliant. And